Hello everyone and welcome to another episode on my Mk1 Golf. It has been a while since we have worked on this car and that is because I got held up by other projects like my BMW E28, my Volvo and the workshop. But today we are going to start doing some fun things to the car. A few episodes ago I mentioned that I want to do a 2-liter engine swap on this car. But before I can go ahead with that project, I want to fix everything else that is currently wrong with the car. And a rear axle restoration is first on my to-do list. That is because I've always felt that this car is a little bit loose around the rear end. And that is probably due to the bushings that don't look too healthy. But I'm going to put the car on the lift and then we are going to take a look at it together so that you guys can see what I mean.
All my friends, yellow rider.
The rear axle on Mk1 Golfs is made up of two trailing arms that are connected by a twist beam. The crossbeam holds the trailing arms together and provides roll stiffness by twisting when the trailing arms move up and down. The one on my car doesn't look very fresh and the bushings in the pivots have disintegrated almost completely. And instead of only replacing these bushings, I feel like doing a complete restoration on everything. So instead of taking the rear axle of my car and then restoring it and then putting it back on the car, I opted to buy another complete rear axle and then restore that one. The reason for that is that when I did my BMW project with the subframes, the car sat on my lift for almost 2 months and it was really annoying because I couldn't do anything else in the meanwhile. So that is why I opted to leave the Golf on its 4 wheels so that I could move it around and obviously use my lift. And then when everything is ready to be swapped, it only takes a couple of hours to switch everything. The axle I bought is in slightly worse condition than the one on my car. There is a lot of surface rust to be found and the drum brakes seem very crusty on the inside. But I picked this one up for a reason, and that is because it is fitted with an anti-roll bar. These can be found on Mk1 Jettas and the later Cabrio models, and I'm not sure if the GTIs came with these as well. But for sure this will be a great suspension upgrade, so I can't wait to feel how this will change my Golf's handling. But first, a restoration is in order and I'm going to start with taking everything apart. Okay, everything that needed to be disassembled is disassembled, and that means we can move to part 2 of the restoration. A lot of the parts are going to be thrown away, and when I say thrown away, I mean that it's going to go in my spare parts bin. But obviously we are also going to need to restore some of the parts, and the rear axle is the main event in that department. The plan is to put everything that fits in the sandblasting cabinet in there and then sandblast it, and the larger parts like the roll bar and the rear axle are going to be taken down to bare metal with a steel wire grinding wheel, and then we are going to coat everything in RX5 and RX10. After several hours of annoying my neighbors, I finally managed to grind away most of the surface rust. It is no drama if I miss the spot because the RX products are very capable of isolating rust. As a matter of fact, it is recommended to let the bare metal oxidize for 24 hours before applying RX5. That is because it makes it easier for the product to grab onto the metal. Next, we'll give a similar treatment to the anti-roll bar and the other parts. The bushings in the pivots of this axle are in better condition than the ones on my car. Nevertheless, we are going to replace them with new ones, so they have to come out. So here we've got all the parts that I am going to paint. As you can see here, I've got some small parts lined up that I quickly threw in the sandblaster. The result of the sandblasting is not perfect, but it is very frustrating to sandblast with my air compressor. It takes ages for the correct pressure to build up, so I kind of quickly went over all of these parts, but they look good enough to be painted. So yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. The next step is going to be to paint prep everything, and that is going to be done with some wax and grease remover. I don't think I really need to tape anything off. And once that is done, we can give the parts first a coat of RX5 and then a coat of RX10. After every part got covered with RX5, I let them dry for 24 hours before applying them with RX10. The brackets that hold the anti-roll bar got a coat of bright silver paint to add some accents. I let everything dry for another 24 hours and the finish of the RX10 is amazing, especially for being painted with a brush. The only downside I see for this product is the drying time. Some areas are still a bit wet, but I really have to start assembling again due to time constraints. I bought a load of parts from Mk1 for this build. They still offer a lot of new OEM quality parts, which makes builds like this a lot more enjoyable. After we've installed all of these parts, the axle will be like new, and I can't wait to see what it will look like on the car. I laid out everything like this not only because it looks really satisfying, but also to be sure that I have everything to complete this build in one go. It would be very annoying to start working on this and then having to go to the shops or having to order something that you forgot. So like this, I know that everything is here and we are going to start with assembling the brakes again. Ja. Doe maar. Zo, met.
Zo dat zeker.
With the roll bar installed, we are ready to put the axle on the car. I'm not fitting the drum brakes just yet because I need access to the brake shoes in order to connect the handbrake cable. Now let's detach the old axle and swap it for the new one. Taking off the rear axle beam is not very hard as you would expect from an old Volkswagen. I think it is about 6 bolts and then the whole thing should drop down. The first 2 bolts are here at the bottom part of the shock absorbers, and then there are 2 here and 2 here, and then everything should drop down. But before we can even do that, I need to disconnect the brake lines, and I also need to disconnect the handbrake cable. That needs to be done from inside of the brakes, so the drum will need to come off first. With the handbrake cable and the brake lines disconnected, the axle can come down. But of course, being the professional that I am, I forgot to press record on my camera when we took it off, but you get the idea. With some help, the freshly restored axle is quickly installed. And take a gander at how fresh that looks. To end the evening, I'm attaching the brake lines and the handbrake cables, and then the drum can be thrown on as well. I'm very pleased with the end result. It has been such a long time since I've worked on this car, and every time I'm surprised by how easy it is to tinker with. I hope you guys liked watching this video as much as I liked making it, and if you did, please consider subscribing. And keep an eye on the channel because there are going to be a lot more videos coming for this car. Until next time.